Okay, so welcome back to another review. This time we're going to be comparing the SHP 9600s against the 9500s and the AKG K7XX. So I'm just going to go quickly over the contents, build quality, etc. because there's, that's the less interesting part and that's not really what this comparison is all about. So let's just get that out of the way quickly. As far as the contents are concerned, there's really nothing worth going over in detail here. They come with the things you'd expect from headphones at this price point, which would be the headphones themselves, a cable, an adapter for 1/4 inch, and the box itself. I should mention though, while the SHP's boxes display an image of the headphones, the K7XX's box has a partial window which displays the right side of the headphone. So as far as build quality is concerned, all three headphones are mostly made of plastic. A type of plastic that seems very appropriate for this price point. Very decent, can't complain at all. However, they start to differ when it comes to the headband itself. The SHPs feature a more traditional headband with a metal size adjustment mechanism. The AKGs feature a suspension strap mechanism instead. The strap itself is made of a pleather material, while the plastic band that goes over it is made out of it's a thin and simple plastic. So all three of these headphones are open back. This means that the drivers are exposed so that they sound less isolated and allow sounds to enter/exit. Keep in mind that also means there's no sound isolation on these, although the K7XX do muffle my voice a tad more than the SHPs when you have them on your head. Now, as far as comfort's concerned, all three of these headphones are extremely comfortable. However, the K7XX really take it a step further. These are pretty much my golden standard for an at-desk headphones comfort right here. The perfect clamp force, lightweight, no hot spots, and super soft pads that are plush enough to not apply pressure, but not so plush that they provide no grip. The only complaint I might have with these is that their cups are so large that they can get in the way when trying to rest your head on the back of your chair. Now, I can easily rest my head while looking forward, no problems at all, but turning my head is out of the question, which can get annoying if you have multiple monitors or a large TV. The SHPs are also quite comfortable. Both are a tad lighter than the K7XX. The 9600 has the stronger clamp force of the two. I recommend it for moving around the house since it slips back and forth a lot less. The 9500s are better suited for at-desk use. People complain about the pads being itchy, particularly on people with beards. However, as a people with beard, I personally didn't encounter that sort of issue. Now, as far as amplification is concerned, all three of these should be relatively easy to power off of lower powered devices. However, the K7XX are actually quite a bit power hungry. So on the THX AAA 789, I run the 9500 and 9600 at around 9:30 AM on gain 2 or 11:30 AM on gain 1. I run the K7XX at around 9 AM on gain 3 or 11:30 AM on gain 2. Now, I do prefer them on gain 3 the most. Feed these babies some power and they really seem to come to life. Now, for the sound quality, as usual, the following impressions were obtained without the use of any EQ whatsoever. My findings regarding EQ can be found in the notes and observations portion of this review. Now, with that out of the way, let's begin. So let's start off with the bass response. Bass guitars sound the fullest and thickest on the 9600. They might even be a tad too forward and meaty, but this is mostly just me expressing my audio preferences. The 9500 are the leanest in this department, but still offer a little bit of meatiness and texture on the bass guitars. The K7XX give the least amount of texture to bass guitars. They do, however, sound the cleanest. With electronic bass, the K7XX and SHP 9500 seem to be at right around the same volume. However, it is clear that the K7XX offers the better bass extension of the two. It's one of those headphones that don't have excessive levels of bass, but do have a very respectable amount of extension down below. The 9600 is more forward with the bass as a whole, and it is definitely the wooliest of the bunch. So a quick example for drums, Helena Beat by Foster the People. At the intro of the track, the 9600 reproduced the drums with the most hollow sound of all. To me, it sounds a bit too thick to be natural. The 9500 lies smack dab right down the middle. I think they strike a good balance between a light and nimble sound while maintaining a good amount of thickness and reverb during the decay. Last of all, the K7XX do this kind of wacky. Their reproduction of drums sounds sort of shallow and sharp, almost like knocking on a door with your proximal interphalangeal joint. And yes, I looked that up. I'm not saying that they don't sound good, but I just find it difficult to imagine this type of sound coming off of a drum. So generally speaking, the 9600 are going to have the thick and meaty bass response, while the 9500 and the K7XX lie closer to neutral to bass light territory in most circumstances. Now for the mids, as far as female vocals are concerned, the 9600 do the worst job in my opinion. They sound blanketed, mostly due to the fact that the bass response seems to bleed into the mids quite a bit. Although the vocals are very soft in texture, they are also the most distant and the least detailed. The 9500 are right down the middle in terms of forwardness here. However, they also reproduce the thinnest vocals. They can also be a bit too gritty when pushing it. Now the K7XX have the most forward female vocals and are the most detailed of the bunch. I was going to declare these as the winner for female vocals, but I did encounter a bit of a gripe farther into the test track. There does seem to be a bit of a spike in the mids that creates this kind of echo in the vocals, which I personally consider to be quite nice, but it also causes some shoutiness. The 9500 actually reproduced the cello with a slight nasal twang to it, but it is also very articulate and detailed. Now the K7XX again possess a somewhat wacky timbre, but they are also the most third-dimensional of the bunch, so let me explain what I mean. With the SHPs, the cello is coming from the right side, right? Perfect, no problem. With the K7XX, however, you can sort of distinguish that there is space behind the cello, creating a slightly more rounded image in your mind. So overall, the 9600 reproduced the darkest mids of the bunch. At best, you could say these mids sound very smooth. The 9500 reproduced the lightest, most articulate mids of the bunch. They have this nimble type of sound that works best for string instruments. Last of all, the K7XX are on an entirely different playing field. Let's not forget, these retailed for around double to triple the price of the SHPs until they were discontinued. As far as timbre is concerned, they lie right in between the two SHPs. However, the amount of detail present really is a step higher. Now let's step into the treble. With cymbals, the 9600 offer the darkest response of the bunch, respectful while also being relatively detailed. The 9500s offer the brightest response. Cymbals come forward in front of every other instrument, but can sound a bit grainy. In other words, not very smooth. The K7XX do cymbals the best. They land right in between the 9500 and 9600 in terms of forwardness. However, it is very clear to hear that these simply have the most control over the region. In the consonant range, the 9600 are the most recessed. They manage to prevent most instances of sibilance. The K7XX can get a little more sibilant, but remain free of harshness in tracks with a more accurate mix. The 9500 are the most sibilant of the bunch. That isn't to say that they're hard to listen to, but I definitely recommend EQing these if possible, and more on that later. So overall, I found the K7XX's treble response to be the best out of the three. It lands in the sweet spot where most of the treble is darkish, making for a smooth listen. However, it does have a few peaks here and there, which make instruments like cymbals pop forward and sound detailed without the repercussions of extreme brightness or forwardness. Now, the 9500's brighter treble response proves to be more of a benefit than a detriment, but still comes with its own set of flaws. The 9600 are the exact opposite of that. Their more laid-back treble can be a more relaxing listen, but the treble can lack a bit of bite in a handful of tracks. Now, with Soundstage Imaging, the 95 and 9600s land close to each other in the soundstage category. They are on the mid to narrow side of things, but the 9500 managed to sound a tad wider than the 9600 due to their sound signature. The more airy and open sounding treble of the 9500 makes them sound far more open than the more boxed in sound of the 9600, which is created by its bass response. The K7XX, however, trumps both of them in terms of width. I mean, these things sound wide. They're wide. Now, for imaging, neither of these are an excellent performer in any sense of the word. If I had to say, the K7XX seemed to be the better headphone at imaging, but the 9600 are extremely close behind. In some instances, I would even say that the 9600 managed to outdo the K7XX. The 9500, however, do perform noticeably worse than the other two. Again, not bad, just bad by comparison. So for the notes and observations portion, the problem with the 9500 is mostly with their treble response. Therefore, the goal of the following EQ settings is to reduce the brightness just a tad and eliminate any sort of treble spike that may occur, which causes harshness. Unfortunately, this was the closest I was able to correct the SHP 9500s without changing their entire sound signature from the ground up. It definitely reduces brightness a little, which is helpful, but a bit of the sibilance in the S range remains. Now, the biggest issue with the 9600 lies in its bass response. It is simply too meaty to stomach. Stop laughing. Its treble response is mostly neutral, but can be a tad too dark in some areas. Therefore, the following EQ aims to reduce excess warmth and bloat in the bass response, while keeping it a generally lush sounding headphone. This would allow the mids the space they require to then perform a quick adjustment in order to bring them forward. It also aims to provide the treble response with an extra bit of sparkle up top, definitely, especially in its darkest areas. Thankfully, I feel this EQ tastefully manages to achieve what it sets out to do. Now, the only real issue I found with the K7XX that desperately needs fixing, if anything at all, is that shoutiness that occurs in some of the vocals. Thankfully, the following EQ settings manage to accomplish what they set out to do, leaving everything else untouched, except for that bass shelf down below, because, you know, bass, 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 bass. Bass, 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 bass. So to conclude, all of these are fine headphones. They each have their own flaws that need to be dealt with, but can indeed be dealt with. The SHPs are excellent headphones, despite only being masters of some. The 9500 deliver a clean and airy response that is ideal for picking out little details in tracks. The 9600 deliver a warm and smooth response that can prove to be the better alternative for bass-heavy tracks that are more about the girth than airiness. However, EQ is highly suggested on these. The K7XX, on the other hand, are an entire step above the SHPs. They are the porridge that is just right, so to speak. They deliver a clean and relatively flat bass response while providing a smooth treble response that is both sparkly and comfortable to listen to at once. Now, that slight shoutiness in the mids can be ignored, and I should know, I ignored it ever since I got them way back when. Fun fact, these are actually my first ever audiophile headphone. The first audiophile product I got were the iSign 10s, but EQing it can definitely help out. It's just too bad that they are no longer available to purchase brand new. All the same though, one can find them for excellent prices in the secondary market. And well, that's gonna go ahead and do it for me. I hope this video helped you out. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Go down below, check out the links. You know what to do, Patreon, yada yada. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bass, 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 bass.